Alright, this is a pair of freshwater carburetors. 23 years old. And they basically looked like this when I took them off. I mean, there was a little yellow tint to them from the old gas, but I think if I could have put gas in the fuel line, this thing would have started. And what I use for carb cleaner is I set them in a bucket of 2 gallons of hot water in a cup like this, maybe half full of Blue Dawn dishwashing detergent. And then I'll let them sit overnight. And then what I do is I'll take a air chuck fitting, stick it in my air hose, turn it up to about 5 psi, stick that in the water, just let it gurgitate. And I did that for about 4 hours today, and made a big foamy pile. But this is what they look like when they come out. I mean, there's not a drop of dirt. The screws have all had the black paint on them, so they hadn't been molested. I don't think these carburetors have ever been apart. So we will put these together. I got my fuel tank emptied. I got about 5 gallons of brown gasoline out of it. So I took 2 gallons of purple power, or simple green, poured it in there, filled the gas tank up, stuck my air hose in there for about 20 minutes and let it gurgitate and mix all that stuff up. I let that sit overnight. Put my air hose in there again tomorrow for probably 2 or 3 hours. Sinuses are messed up, but then we'll siphon all that gas out, get every drop we can. I'll take a rag, put it on a stick, shove it down in there, soak up all the moisture. There's my bucket. And then we will try and get this started the weekend. There they are, all rebuilt, new fuel lines. They even put the new Y fitting in it. Linkage come out perfect. Clean set of carburetors right there. Okay, we're going to get in depth on the fuel system and all the fuel lines for this 97 GTX Seadoo jetski. I looked online, just to see what the videos were, and there's nothing really in depth as far as where the lines go, what the lines do. We're going to get in depth with that scary thing. Everybody gets all paranoid with that. The fuel filter and the fuel selector. All right, these are 2 gigantic Mikuni carburetors. They're basically just huge chainsaw carburetors. If you're familiar how a chainsaw carburetor works, you'll be familiar with these. These 2 are both coupled together by fuel lines. Only the front one has a fuel pump. Okay? The fuel is actually pulled in through this line here. It's pumped through here into this carburetor. The excess fuel out of this carburetor gets pushed into this line. The excess fuel from the back carburetor gets pushed into this line. That goes to back to the fuel sending unit, we'll call it. Okay? This is your pulse line that goes to the block. Every time the piston goes up and down, it creates a vacuum and it creates a pulse, and that's what activates the fuel pump. And it's totally simple. You can see how the fuel comes in, fuel goes out. Okay? And this is the fuel filter. Pretty simple. Fuel goes in, fuel goes out. Okay? This is the fuel selector. This is the reserve hose. This is the out hose that goes to the fuel filter. And this is the main line, which will be on. Reserve is when you run out of gas, you flip it to reserve. And I'm going to explain how it works in here. Okay? Pretty simple. Okay, we pop the bottom of this off. This just goes here. It's got these 2 little tabby things there. Poke them with a tiny screwdriver. Don't push them so hard they'll break. Just push them in enough to release them. Now, this is your fuel float. See how it's got magnets on it? This goes in here, like this, and it gets lifted up and down. See that circuit board? It passes by a bunch of resistors, tells you how much fuel you got. That's another Jenny Jones story. All right. Now, if you look, you see daylight at the top, you see daylight at the bottom. Okay? That's this one and this one. They serve the same purpose. Okay? The two you want to worry about are these two. This one and this one. See how this one's cut up? Probably about, let's say, 2-3 inches. That's what you call your main. That goes to your fuel petcock. That's when you're running with a full tank of gas. When you get down and you start running out of gas, you switch it over to reserve, and it pulls out of this one. This one will go all the way to the bottom of the tank or close to it. Okay? Them are the two you gotta keep in mind. Main, reserve. And if you hold the thing up like this, main, reserve. Just that easy. Side by side. Main, see this, see where this is at? Main, reserve. Reserve is at 1 o'clock, main is at 7 o'clock, okay? These two here, you're gonna have the return that comes back from the carburetor, which is that line there. It can go either place, it doesn't matter. It's just dumping the fuel back in the tank. And if you're using this one for return, this one's gonna be the vent that goes out the side of the jet ski up front, and I'll show you that when we get into putting the fuel lines on. But these two here, you can use them either way. It doesn't matter. Some people call this a vent, and this is return, this is return, this is a vent. It doesn't matter. The ones you got to worry about are these two right here. Okay? And if you even look carefully, see that says reserve, and that says on, where I got it with the paint marker. Pretty simple. Okay? There's all the old fuel line cut out. I don't bother measuring each one. I just route them, move them up, cut them. And this is your pulse hose. Goes from the block to here. I like making my hose a little long so there's no kink in it. The old one was hard as a rock, so we're going to get rid of that, because if that even has a crack in it, this thing won't pump fuel and it won't run. Okay, this is our main, remember? This one right here. This is main, this is reserve. Right there. So we're going to plug a hose into this main and run it up front to where the petcock goes. So we brought our hose up here, and we're going to hook it into on. The next hose is going to be the reserve, which is that one right there. Remember? About 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock right there, next to the wires. See that T-fitting right there? That's a vent. So we can use either one of those posts on top of that sending unit to go to the vent. We'll do that one next. Now we're going to do the one out of the petcock, which is this one here, goes to the fuel filter inside. So that would be this fitting here. So we'll do that one. With them three hoses on the petcock, we can put the petcock back or the fuel selector back. There's the fuel filter hanging down. We have to go from here to the inlet side of the carburetor, and then we have to do the return line from the carburetor to our fuel sending unit that's down in there, remember? So there's the inlet line. Goes all the way up front here to our fuel filter. Now that we have both lines on the fuel filter, all three hoses on the petcock, those two can be put back. Now keep in mind, I have a brand new one of these coming, but it's lost in oblivion with the US mail. They're saying I'll get it Monday. So we got our petcock back in, our fuel hose, fuel filter back on. The only line we got left to do is this return to the only spot left we have on the top of that tank. And that's it. And you're done. All right, got all the fuel lines on. I used a little vacuum pump to pull the fuel through this line and then just plugged it in, and